I want to learn a lot and I want my mind changed on a couple of things. You know, like for example, you hear these ER doctors, they always do these TikToks on the 5 things I will never let my kid do as a pediatric ER doctor. What's always on that list? The trampoline. The trampoline is always on that stinking list. Sarah, do you let your kids jump on a trampoline?
Welcome to the Christy-Faith Show, where we share game-changing ideas with intentional parents like you. I'm your host, Christy-Faith, experienced educational advisor and homeschool enthusiast. Together, we'll explore ways to enrich and transform both your life and the lives of your children.
This episode is brought to you by a program I've been using going on 5 years now. Cross7, classically based musical memory work. I've seen firsthand how memory work has benefited my own kiddos, especially as they've grown older and started engaging in more complex homeschool material. What I love about this faith-based program is its dynamic blend of songs, videos, quizzes, and an interactive flashcard system. It's all designed to make learning and retention both fun and interactive. Whether you're already familiar with memory work or just getting started, check out the show notes for information and a free trial of Cross7. Cross7 is a family-owned company, and they truly are the sweetest people you would ever meet. This faith-based memory work program consistently wins awards, including first place in the Practical Homeschooling Reader Awards. Head over to cross7.org for more information. That's CROSSSEVEN.org. Or click the link in the show notes to start your free trial today. You guys, I am so excited about today's guest, Sarah Collins, my personal friend and your homeschool OT. She is a homeschool mother, and she serves you with your educational needs, all parents across the nation, with her consulting services. She has a background in both pediatrics and home health and is a homeschooling parent herself. She currently serves families as an occupational therapist through her company, Homeschool OT. She focuses on helping parents make the match between homeschool and their child's current skill set, all while working towards what their children specifically need and want to do to occupy their time. Hello, occupation. She does this by consulting with parents all around the world, teaching month-long classes on specific topics, building community in an online membership, and communicating nationally as a speaker at conferences. I asked Sarah to come on the show today because a topic that is really important, because we face this every day, especially as homeschooling parents, where we want our children outside and playing. Charlotte Mason says they should have at least 4 hours or more a day of unsupervised, gasp, playtime with friends where they are just running amok, going wild, skinned knees and all of that. Well, that brings up a very modern question to today, where we have kids with significant injuries. You hear these news headlines of stories of young athletes getting injuries very early, getting head injuries, for example, with tackle football, and all of these nightmare stories that are valid, and people's lives have really been traumatized and damaged. What's the word I'm looking for that's even more, people's lives have been heavily impacted by legitimate catastrophes and damages that impact them for their whole future. So, and we don't want to minimize that, because accidents do happen. However, there is a benefit to letting go of the reins a little bit, and not just a benefit like it makes our lives a little bit easier because we're not having to hover over our kids all day, but there's actually benefits to our children and their brains and how they are developing. And that's why I asked Sarah Collins on the show today, who is an occupational therapist and knows a lot about risky play. Can you start out today? Oh, you know where I want you to start out? I want to hear how you started on your homeschooling journey. First off, before we get into the topic.
Well, sure. Absolutely. So it's actually interesting because I come at this from like 3 different sides. My first degree and what I did like immediately out of college was I was a recreation therapist, right? So that really came about because I was a nursing major in school, and then I passed out my first day that I was like there to do my child. I know. I didn't eat that morning. I was so nervous. It was awful. And I was like going into my first like clinical. And then I was like, I clearly should not be a nurse. So I wanted to stay in the medical profession. The only other thing the school that I was going to at the time had was recreation therapy. So I did that. And I actually loved it. I worked at a children's hospital in Richmond, Virginia for kids whose medical needs were so severe that they lived at the hospital. And my job was really to help to get out into the community. I organized all the field trips. We went everywhere. In fact, super cool story. This summer, my daughter is going to DC as a intern for advocacy, for Children's Advocacy Day with one of my really best friends. And they are highlighting the Children's Hospital beach trip that I started 20 years ago. And she's going to go and like get to see it highlighted. So anyway, side note, super cool. So that was the beginning. And then I became an occupational therapist, went back to school. That I finished school in 2008 and worked full time for, I don't know, a long time until 2017. And we were moving at that point and following my husband's career. And we moved in March and they started public school and then we're moving again in May to our current house. And I was like, this is dumb. Why are we going to another school again and again? And we started homeschooling. I said, well, just, figure this out, see how that goes. And that was 2017. We have never looked back. So that's kind of how that, transition happened. But because of that, because of my background first in, as a recreation therapist and play, I really valued it so much within my treatment sessions when I was working full time and really trying to make sure that I was, like you said in the intro, helping parents to ensure that their kids are able to do what they specifically need to want to do. Because that's different for everybody. What you do through your day, what I do through my day, it's very different. But the one universal is that kids all need to be able to play. So that was really important in my sessions then and throughout our homeschool day, prioritizing time for my children to be able to be outside. And I know you can't see it from here, but my office fits a window and my boys are back playing wiffle ball right now. I can see them. And I just watched my, speaking of risky play, just watched one son peg a ball at the other. So, we got that going for us right now.
That's a wonderful story. Can you explain what is risky play and why is it so important to child development?
Absolutely. So, and yes, like every good, classical educator, I think we need to start with a definition, right? And so it is written, and I'm going to go through these 6 specific ways. So risky play is, I rewrote down, this was funny. I had to go back and look up to make sure that I was doing these, making sure I'm pulling at it right. So I'm like, I don't want to miss anything.
Yeah.
So, and this actually is coined from an article that was published in 2011 by Ellen Sandsetter in Evolutionary Psychology. So this is how it's defined there. So risky play is anything thrilling and exciting that involves some sort of risk of physical injury. So it can be handling dangerous toys, being near dangerous elements such as fire and water, exploring heights like climbing trees and rocks, speed such as skiing, that would be, fast going down a hill, any rough and tumble play, or playing on one's own individually, without direct supervision. So, am I saying, we should go skiing down a hill towards a fire with, an open hand knife, do a somersault and land, in the water? No, that's not the point to do all of the things, but it is to consider how much risk are we allowing our kids to have during the day? How much risk are they initiating on their own? And how is that helping them to build their own confidence and even their own ability to move? You mentioned earlier some really severe injuries that have happened. And I think there's 2 things to say with that. Number 1 is clearly we do not want to say that doesn't matter. But we also need to remember that because it happened to one person doesn't mean it's going to happen to us, so we don't, it's kind of 2 sides of it. We don't want to completely avoid everything because there is a minimal risk. We also, at the same time, need to kind of encourage it, because there is more risk involved when our kids don't know their bodies and don't know what they're capable of and are taking inadvertent risks because they don't know, because they haven't tried things. So like there's a step by step of recognizing, all right, what is a risk now? And are we taking too much or too little?
Before we continue, I want to share with you a program that has been a game changer for our family. At our Learning Center, we instructed and helped kids through pretty much every program on the market. So we know firsthand just how important a solid math foundation is for our kids' futures. Finding the right homeschool math curriculum that didn't compromise academic excellence, but also didn't put me and my kids through the ringer was a challenge. Until one day, I found CTC Math. You guys, the rest was history. First off, it's a mastery-based program, which means your child gets a full grasp of the material. It's also loaded with mixed reviews, ensuring your kids don't forget anything they've learned. The questions are adaptive too, which keeps students confident and progressing at their own pace. But the best part, all the teaching, grading, and testing, done for you. With CTC Math, there is no compromise on excellence. Your child gets a top-notch education, and you just made your homeschool life easier. Visit CTC Math to get your free trial today. Whether you're newer to homeschooling or you've been homeschooling over a decade, the fact is creating a streamlined, successful homeschool is hard. The pressure is high, and the weight of responsibility often leads to self-doubt, second-guessing, and feeling completely overwhelmed with the excessive amounts of opinions and curricula options out there. We love our kids, and at the same time, the stakes are high. We don't want to mess this up. So how do we build a homeschool that our kids will thank us for when they're adults, and one that you have 100% confidence in? The first step to pulling all of that off is joining Thrive Homeschool Community. Thrive Homeschool Community is where you learn the 8-step homeschool success framework to build an undeniably successful homeschool. Each year and each kid presents us with uncharted territory. But when you have a good plan, the right plan, you can rest in the security and confidence that you are doing a great job. The path is easy. Join Thrive, say a quick hello to your new friends, start the 8-step homeschool success framework, and kiss anxiety goodbye. It's risk-free, no contracts. You can cancel anytime, no questions asked. Go to Christy-Faith.com. That's CHRISTY-FAITH.com. Enter promo code podcast for $10 off your first month. See you inside. So that's fascinating to me, because what's coming to mind when you're saying that is there, you can have a lot of play where you understand your body and all of these things, but it doesn't always have to have risk involved. Is there something about that risk that makes it different? What is the argument that these psychologists and occupational therapists or whoever is doing these studies, because there are studies done on this, what is that element that makes it healthy? Why is there this argument for it? I'm just so curious.
Right. So it's kind of important to identify what a risk is for your child, right? Because just like you have different things that you need and want to do during your day, risk is different for everybody. And so, for example, a kiddo who's been very sedentary for quite some time, doing any rough and tumble play, doing any sport, climbing up a rock, or walking on a sidewalk can be risky. So the advantage is, one, that you're getting to know your body, because we can't advocate for ourselves if we don't know ourselves, right? And that is a huge, huge piece that we are seeing, unfortunately, as OTs. And even some of the research is saying, like, diagnosis-wise and things like that, of kids that literally don't know themselves because they haven't been moving. Again, you can't advocate if you don't know. So we kind of need to start there.
Wait. You need to back up and unpack that. That is so profound. Can you explain that?
So if we're thinking about, all right, so let me back up. As an occupational therapist, when I am looking at an activity, right, I analyze what are your social needs within that activity? What are your motor skill needs? What are the cognitive skills that you need, right? So, and we want to look to see, one, within that activity, how we can either adapt it to meet a person's needs or what that the skill needs to be to be able to do it. So even things like, let's say, riding a bike, right? So you need the core strength. You need your visual skills to be able to scan your environment, but also to know depth perception. You need to be able to, separate your right side and your left side. You need to be able to separate your head and your eyes. Because if you, turn your whole head to look behind you and your arms are turning and then you're falling over, we need to make sure we have enough balance. So the vestibular system that's working in there, kids who aren't moving aren't really going to be able to do that, right? And then we also have to think social skills wise. So you need to be able to talk to people or to identify like, all right, here's a sign. Like, what do I need to do here? Can I turn right? We need to know the signals to keep yourself safe. All of these social skills that come along with it. And then the cognitive skills oftentimes are involved with the executive functioning. So getting started, persevering if something is hard, knowing what comes first, second, and third. So our sequencing in there. So there's so many skills within one single activity. If you don't know, because either A, you haven't tried, so you don't know whether you have all of those skills, or B, you don't know which ones are lacking, how can you ask for help? You can't, right? And so now as occupational therapists, we're seeing so many, waiting lists and waiting lists and waiting lists because parents are like, my kiddos can't do this and they can't do this. And we're really struggling here. And it's so long, but a lot of it has to do with the fact that we're not trying, we're not playing, we're not giving that time to get out and move. So if we're providing the opportunity for this risky play. And again, I'm not saying that we're going down at, we're starting with this huge risk, but we're starting with, I like to say, good old Andrew Pudewa within the homeschooling world, right? He talks about easy plus one. So what is easy for your children right now? And so maybe that's playing inside. Maybe that is playing with just your brother. Maybe that is that you go outside and you just kind of look around. Maybe that is, that we are climbing a slide. Imagine that, climbing up the slide, right? Ooh, risk.
You're not allowed to do that anymore.
That actually kind of makes me laugh because that is one of the things that is so good for kids is to climb up the slide because it's at an angle and the core strength and the upper body skills that's going. As homeschoolers, we have this unique ability to be able to go to playgrounds at times that not everybody's there. Climb up the slide, guys. It's okay. Climb up the slide.
Yes,
but so
you can do it.
Right? Where is your child now? And what can we do to encourage just one little step further towards independence?
So that resonates with me very much because I am in Colorado. And so most kids here, starting at a very young age, because they actually have a state-sponsored program here to try to get kids hooked on skiing. They offer free skiing for young kids. It's a whole program here. Anyway, but you should see by the time these kids are in junior high, they are going down black diamonds and it's like, how can you possibly do this and not get killed? But that is an example of what you're saying, where that is not as risky for them because they grew up on the slopes. They did this easy plus one for years until they reached that particular level. Why do you think, I do believe that this whole, there's a book out, I think it was called Free Range Parenting. Actually, I think that's by the same publisher as me, or Free Range Kids or something like that, where this kind of go outside and just let them be. I kind of grew up that way. It was like, you just stay outside and don't come in until the streetlights come on and then come in for dinner. But it's not like that anymore. And I'm not quite sure why. Is it social media? Is it news? Because risks are just constantly put in front of our face with child abductions and all of this stuff. I want to grow today on this episode and I want to learn a lot and I want my mind changed on a couple of things. Like for example, you hear these ER doctors and they always do these TikToks on the 5 things I will never let my kid do as a pediatric ER doctor. What's always on that list? The trampoline. The trampoline is always on that stinking list. Sarah, do you let your kids jump on a trampoline?
The show will resume in just a minute, but first I want to share with you an incredible resource that is totally free to homeschooling families everywhere. Have you ever felt like you were on trial for your homeschooling choice when visiting a doctor or another service provider? It's unsettling, especially when someone misinformed has the power to threaten your family. Unfortunately, we have heard countless stories of parents who have felt trapped in offices and met with suspicion rather than support simply because they were homeschoolers. I've been profiled and interrogated myself, and I'm sure many of you have as well. Enough is enough. It's time we proactively vet service providers before giving them our business and our money. Enter Christy-Faith's List, a directory 100% free to homeschooling families, connecting you with homeschool-friendly service providers who promise to support you in your homeschooling choice. We want every homeschooler in America to know about and be using this list. So here's how to make Christy-Faith's List a household name. 1, tell all your friends about it. Let's show the market just how powerful the homeschool movement is. 2, check Christy-Faith's List website before stepping foot into any service provider's office to make sure they are on there. And 3, if your favorite service provider isn't on the list, make sure to refer them. There's a button on the homepage of the website. It takes only 30 seconds, and that way we can send them a lovely invite. If you're listening and you are a homeschool-friendly professional, we want you on the list. We're eager to connect homeschooling families with you, shout your name from the rooftops, and bring you tons and tons of business. We have plans for every type of business, both small, local, nationwide, and worldwide. Check out ChristyFaithsList.com today.
Doesn't cleaning feel like a never-ending battle, especially with kids, pets, and daily life creating messes everywhere? Sure, the kids can help, but we don't want them exposed to harsh, dangerous chemicals, right? The problem is a lot of cleaning products out there aren't safe. Here's the answer you've been looking for. Meet Green Clean Organics, a totally safe, magically effective organic cleaner. It's your go-to for pet accidents, food spills, grease, and organic waste. And it's completely safe for your kids and fur babies. Green Clean Organics is an eco-friendly commercial-grade formula with enzymes that break down odors and eliminate stains from carpet, fabrics, laundry, and so much more. And unlike other cleaners that rely on awful headache-inducing fragrances to cover up odors, Green Clean Organics does what it's supposed to do, breaks down the nasty stuff and actually cleans. And did I mention it's on Amazon Prime? Just put Green Clean Organics in the search bar and try a bottle today.
There's a trampoline in my backyard. You know I got a trampoline. I believe it.
Okay, so speak to our hearts. Do you see what truth can you suss out here that we're not seeing here with the parents that are just really scared of a brain injury or, all sorts of things, the risks that are out there that are put in front of our face every day?
So I think you touched on a couple of things. Number one is that you were said, we are bombarded with the dangers on a day-to-day basis, right? Let's just even take the playground, for example. Okay, so back in the 1980s, right? That's when I grew up. Playgrounds looked completely different than they do right now. So, I'm talking the metal slides where you burn like the backs of your legs, and the merry-go-round where literally they're spinning and the kids are flying off. Yeah. The swings with really long legs so that you can spin your whole body around and then you're like unwinding, right? So in the 80s, there was a court case, right? Because of some injuries that had happened. And that kind of started with this, okay, now everything must be regulated. And we want to have, literally 9 inches of either 9 inches of mulch or a padded, bottom and things like that. Okay. So, which is fantastic. And I'm not saying that great. I love it that we are trying to make things safer. But here's what happened is that it's not actually safer. The number of injuries on playgrounds in the 1980s, I actually re-looked up the number the other day before this started, like all of this risky play in the 1980s was 156,000, right? The number of injuries on a playground right now, 218,000 last year. So you can say all right, why? Why is this increasing like that if we are so careful all the time? And we want to be so careful because we hear all of these things that are happening. And again, I am not saying that those things don't happen to somebody, right? And And for an ER doctor, when you see the worst of the worst of the worst, that's what you kind of think is the norm. My son, actually, my husband and I were talking because I worked at Children's Hospital and a few different. I worked at Children's Hospital in Richmond, Virginia, and then after that, I worked at Kennedy Krieger in Baltimore. And at that point, like I was working at, it's called the Specialized Transition Program. So it's kids coming out of rehab, but transitioning back into school. And so I was seeing car accidents. I was seeing skateboarding injuries. I was seeing kids struck by lightning and working through all of this. And so we said, like, if I have children, this was before we had kids, was I going to be a person that was like, no, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this? Or a person that's like, it's an arm, like you're going to break an arm and it's going to be okay. And we're going to move forward. And I found, like, for myself, I'm somewhere in the middle where there's necessary risks and unnecessary risks. Like, should you ride your bike without a helmet? No. Why? But so put it on. Should you go in the car without a seatbelt? No. Buckle the seatbelt, right? Take the safety precautions, but don't stop the activities because somebody else was hurt before. So just a trampoline, for example, right? So the jumping on a trampoline provides intense proprioceptive information. So that is information through your joints. It's something you might often hear it called heavy work. Okay. This is what helps us to regulate the nervous system. So frequently when you are becoming more heightened, so for example, like the lights are really bright or, it's very loud and your clothes are itchy or whatever, and you're starting to feel really, really overwhelmed. What helps to calm you down is proprioception. It really regulates that nervous system. Jumping is one of the primary ways to do that. So not only are we calming the nervous system, but they're also understanding their body. They're using all of those joints and muscles. So we're getting stronger. We're regulating the nervous system. So we're getting calmer, and they're recognizing what their capabilities are. So without that, one, it's harder to organize your body and understand it. Two, you're not as strong. And three, you don't know yourself. If you don't know yourself, you're not as strong and you're not as regulated, you're more likely to be injured. So
Yeah. Well, and that's so true. I was just thinking that, like, the stronger you are and the more you're doing things and activities, we know this as adults, the less prone we are to injury. Right? Like at my Pilates class, I love it. I love doing, that I do Pilates. That Pilates keeps me out of prison. I've told you this.
If you're enjoying the show and you don't want to miss out on future episodes, hit that like and subscribe button and show us some love with your comments. Those 5-star reviews really do make a difference.
You would have loved today's class. We're so going to get on a tangent right now. But oh my goodness, she had us balancing on one of those long tubes. So we were on it with our back like this. We were having to do different things with our legs than we were with our arms and not fall off that freaking tube. And a lot of us ladies were like catching ourselves with our elbows. Can I tell you though, I am so calm now. It wasn't even the hardest workout, but it does something to my brain that I can walk into chaos after a 50-minute class and I'm calm. I'm not screaming at my kids. I'm not this. And I think that when I get a little bit overwhelmed, like you said, clothes itchy, overwhelmed with light, I felt called out, right? But what it reminds me of is our kids need that too. Like when I realize how much, wow, I haven't been to Pilates for 2 days. Maybe that's why I'm feeling like I'm crawling out of my own skin and my mind is just right. And even I get negative thoughts. It's just, there's something about, and I don't get it from running. There's something about Pilates, which I'm sure you could have the scientific explanation for. But my point is how much that has really made me realize how much my kids need that. So in the middle of your homeschool day, if they're getting frustrated, dysregulated, what are some activities? Let's do some tangibles real quick. What are some activities that will address that proprioception to help them regulate? If they, a couple outside, and then if weather's bad, what are a couple things inside that just a 15-minute break can make all the difference?
Yeah. So you need to think through climbing, crawling, pushing, and pulling. And those are anything that would have those things is going to give you that proprioceptive input. So talk about inside. You can do things like chores. Imagine that. We can carry, right?
Girl, can we record you? All the moms listening are like, honey. Yeah, that's right. All the moms listening are going to like put that on replay. Sarah Collins, the OT, says you need to be doing chores right now. Thanks for joining us for part 1. We hope you gained some valuable insights. Be sure to catch part 2 where we're going to continue this great conversation.
You have my heart.